Ladies and gentlemen, today I would like to share a truth that has been distorted and hidden for nearly half a century. It is the fundamental freedom that many people want to enjoy under the Republic of Vietnam. Freedom that have since been stripped away under communist regime. First, I want to show you what we have been before 1935. All the rights, human rights that once existed. The legacy of the Republic of Vietnam. Before 1975, the South Vietnamese people lived in a system that upheld fundamental civil and political freedoms that were abstract ideas were actively practiced. There are 6 rights of speech. First one, freedom of the press. Hundreds of independent newspapers and magazines were published, including those critical of the government. Journalists operated freely without fear of reprisal. 2. Competitive elections. Multiple political parties compete in regular elections. Citizens have real choice and could replace their leaders. 3. Freedom of religion. As Dr. Tyrone and Dr. Chen mentioned about it before, religious groups, including Buddhists, Catholics, Taoist, and Guanhao, were free to practice their faith and operate without state interference. Number 4. Right to peaceful protest. Demonstrate, labor strike, and political rallies were common and largely protected, even those critical of the state. 5. Freedom of association and political opposition. Citizens could form political parties, social organizations, and student unions. Opposition voiced participate openly in public discourse. Independent judiciary. Judges were not subject to political control. Independent. Judges were not subject to political controls. Courts could rule against government actions and protect citizenship. This freedom made South Vietnam as a beacon of pluralism and democracy in Southeast Asia at the time. Now, after 1975, what has been lost? Life under communist rule today. Since the fall of Saigon in 1965 and the imposition of the communist regime, these rights have been systematically dismantled. The same thing. No independent press. All media are state controlled. Independent journalists and bloggers are jailed under vague laws like Article 117 for anti-state propaganda. 2. No free or competitive elections. Only communist parties approved candidates may run. There is no real political competition. Number 3. No genuine religious freedom. Before we now practice freely, but now religious organizations must register with the state independent sector, like the Unified Buddhist Church of Vietnam. Dr. Chen talked about this before, or independent Hoa are banned and persecuted. Number 4. Criminalization of dissent. Peaceful critics are labeled enemies of the state. Activists, lawyers, and social media use are jailed for unprecedented opinions. 5. Ban on independent unions and parties. Labor rights are tightly controlled. There are no independent trade unions, and political pluralism and outlawed. 6. Suppression of digital speech. Facebook posts, blogs, entry or YouTube video critical of the regime have led to arrest, trials, and long prison sentence. Now the next part, the second part. As retired teachers, math teacher, whenever I take something famous, have to have something like evidence. Right now, I work iPhone, I have to give you a counter example. Whatever propaganda or whatever Communist Party trying to say, I have to give you counter example. Okay, next one. The first thing, okay, the Vietnamese people say, the government, right now, 1965, people today, Vietnam is socialist rule of law state. We live in America, we know that. It's all state. But reality, a tyranny rule of law does not imprison journalists or silence free speech. In the true legal state, law is to protect rights, not to suppress them. In Vietnam, the legal system is used as a political weapon, and the Constitution may mention rights, but not in practice. Journalists like Phạm Công Trang, an independent writer and activist, has been sentenced to 9 years in prison for only what? Propaganda against, because they got under propaganda against the state, simply for advocating peaceful reform. I remember that year 2020, and the years we have a meeting with the State Department. Dr. Tang, remember that one? And Secretary Busby mentioned about that. On that day, the 6th of October 2020, we have dialogue between US and Vietnam. And that day, our activist ended, and she was arrested. And after that, 1921, December 21, she was, sentenced for 9 years up to 2000. Right now 29. Right now she's in jail. Only simplify, simply saying, try to reform, the government. Peaceful bloggers, podcasters, and even Facebook users are arrested for expression dissent. The court lacks independence. And the lawyer, Mr. Lin, you should do your job. Just follow directive from the Communist Party, not impartial justice. In America, we do that? No. It's only in Vietnam. They have law, what they call jungle law. Number 2 is, no one is in prison for political views. The reality is what? Venezuela law criminalize peaceful activism and expression. And Vietnam use loosely defined laws such as Article 117, making, storing, or distributing information against the state. Article 331, abusing democratic freedom to infringe on state interests. This article frequently used in prison. Next one, please. Now, let's talk about the environmental activist like Hoàng Thị Minh Hồng. And she only campaigned for climate change. In America, we say, okay, Mr. President, we have changed the climate. We not talk about, are we going to get in jail? No, I don't think so. But in Vietnam, she was jailed for campaign, jailed for 3 years for under what we call tax evasion. I remember last year, the Undersecretary, and in the May 11th event, she talked about what? No taxes. The Vietnamese people try to say tax invasion, not the real, round against them, but it's called tax invasion. Only what? Or say they understand for pollution in Vietnam. This is the reality in Vietnam. And you got what? 3 years and a half in there. I don't say it's not evidence to show you that. And Buddhist monks, pastors, even farmers protest land season. They are not violent yet treated as criminal. Next one, please. And freedom is a justice for Vietnam unique context. In reality, human rights are universal and not negotiable. This argument is often used by authoritarian regimes to justify, but the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which Vietnam has signed, affirms freedom of free speech, religious assembly, and political motivation are universal, not regional or country context. Cultural and history uniqueness cannot justify season or banning opposition parties. I remember last year, I remember this year, 2025, I remember anyone remember a lawyer Đặng Đình Mạnh. That's why. And that's witness. And because his job is right to protect those prisoner of conscience. And now she is in America. The reason because of and not only him, but those with lawyer Nguyễn Văn Miến, who was escaped Vietnam to US due to Vietnam politics. If the lawyer of human rights, if they're here, who protect them in Vietnam? Because what? Even though they're lawyers, they're still afraid of being in jail. And I don't know whether they are not, but we make sure that in this room, I remember a couple months ago, she is here, and in May 11th, we invite him to talk about that. If Vietnam can trade globally, it must abide the global human rights norms. Next one, please. Lastly, people today live happier, more progressive live. But in reality, material progress cannot replace basic freedom. It's true Vietnam has seen economic growth, but prosperity without freedom brings fear, not happiness. People can buy smartphone, iPhone 16, 17, but are arrested for what they post online, please. For example, here's the one, Bùi Tuấn Long, a noodle vendor in Vietnam, who apparently one of the country's most powerful minister, talk about Tô Lâm, has been jailed for 5.5 years for anti-state propaganda. Anyone know that case? Only one. He tries to mimic whatever the chief doing this, but not mention any name. And he's put how many years? And this one 5.5 years. Only saying not mention any name, but only do the action like that. The chief, only. But 5.5 years. Imagine that we say that you criticize the government in Vietnam. How many years can they do? Like Phạm Đoan Trang, 9 years. And Trần Quang Kỳ Phước, 16 years. And we have a lot. We have to combine a lot about right now. On fire, you have more than 2 people doing that. Happiness must include the right to speak, worship, assemble, and challenge injustice and without fear. Now is my common example. Thank you very much.
So we always save the best for last. As I promised, a representative from VOC, Ms. Karina Littman, welcome for her remark today. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you so much for being here today. My name is Karina Littman, and I am the Government Relations Director here at the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation. We are so honored and delighted to have you all here today. It's wonderful to see the next generation participate in such an important mission. It's wonderful to see you, so many brave men and women, fighting for a cause, both in your home country and here stateside. And I really do hope this is just an opportunity for all of us to come together, regardless of where you're from, regardless of where you fought. My family and I came from Soviet Ukraine, and what's going on right now with Ukraine is extremely sad, but we understand what the Vietnamese people have gone through, and we stand with you today. So we're at a crossroads of time, where the wisdom of the past must be carried forward to illuminate the path ahead of our children. History has taught us many lessons, some triumphant, some tragic, but perhaps none so vital, so dire in consequence as the lesson under the shadow of communism. Communism, in theory, promised equality. In practice, it delivered oppression. It dismantled economies, erased cultural heritage, and extinguished millions of lives. The 20th century bears the scars of regimes that preached utopia, but practiced tyranny. Stalin's Soviet Union, Mao's China, Pol Pot's Cambodia. Wherever communism was implemented in its purest form, it brought starvation, surveillance, censorship, and soul-crushing fear. It is not just a failed economic system. It is a threat to the very core of human freedom and dignity. Yet in our modern world, many young people look upon communism with curiosity or even admiration. Why? Because the horrors are distant, the history is buried, and the propaganda is seductive. It speaks to their noble desires for justice, fairness, and care for the vulnerable. These ideals are worthy, but communism is not the path to achieve them. This is where we, the older generation, come in. We have lived through more, we have seen more, and we must say more. So how do we help that younger generation understand? And part of it is exactly what you're doing here today, is telling the stories. If you fled communism, speak your flight. If your family suffered, share their suffering. If you lived through its collapse, tell them what it felt like to breathe fresh, free air again. It is not a time of silence. It is a time for testimony. Personal narratives resonate more than textbooks ever could. For those who didn't experience it firsthand, read history with your children and your grandchildren. Read Solzhenitsyn or Orwell's 1984. Discuss them. Reflect upon them. The past must not be forgotten, and memory must not be outsourced to the screen. Schools and communities must also play their part. Encourage civic education grounded in facts, not ideology. Organize intergenerational forums where elders can speak directly to the youth. Invite survivors of totalitarian regimes to share their stories in the classroom, churches, and community centers. And it not cost a cent. A grandparent can talk to a grandchild over tea. A working class father can share his concerns with his teenager at the dinner table. A retired teacher can volunteer a few hours a week at the local school. A small business owner can host a community discussion. Everyone has a role. For those with more resources, support organizations that promote freedom, history education, and civic responsibility. Fund scholarship, libraries, or even local museums that are dedicated to preserving the truth of the past. And perhaps most importantly, listen. Listen to the youth. Understand why they are drawn to these ideas. Then engage with them, and not in anger, but with patience and with reason. Show them that freedom is not the enemy of compassion. It is the foundation of it. Let us be the bridge between memory and hope. Let us pass down not just warnings, but wisdom. Because if we do not teach them, someone else will. And that someone may not always have their best interest at heart. So as we continue to fight this deadly ideology, and it is imperative that we educate the next generation of freedom fighters, let us all come together and share our stories and ensure that we're including the next generation in everything that we're doing. Thank you so much again.
Next, we'll have Joseph Lay,
Born and raised in Northern Virginia as a first-generation Asian American, Joseph has played an active voice in the local Asian community. He was crowned Mr. VietFest in 2023 and has deeply been involved with the Vietnamese community and getting involved with the next generation. Joseph.
Thank you, Boone. When I was given this opportunity to speak about my thoughts on the Vietnam War, I was a bit overwhelmed. To speak about something that was so catastrophic to the Vietnamese people, I didn't know where to start, especially because I didn't experience it personally. War, to me, is a terrible thing. A lot of people have to kill each other to solve an issue. It never made sense, and neither does this war. I try to understand by listening to those who experienced the war, and it saddens me to hear about what they had to have gone through. My grandpa being in prison for 13 years in a small box, starving himself, witnessing others be killed, seeing his own people turn against each other. My mother having to travel endless miles on my great-grandfather's back through waters that rose up to his chest, just to provide some meals for my grandfather. Quote-unquote, boat people, fleeing from Vietnam, having to travel through unimaginable conditions. My grandmother and her family were part of those people. I've heard so many gut-wrenching stories full of pain that still affects the Vietnamese people to this day. In the end, I still wonder why this war had to have happened. Power? Ideology? Greed? What I noticed in my family is that we tend to not trust easily, for obvious reasons. But it causes us to not be able to trust some of the littlest things. Being taught that the world is a dangerous place, always keeping our heads on a swivel, not to trust anyone so easily. The fear of being stabbed in the back is strong in the Vietnamese community. At the same time, I feel as if this made the Vietnamese community stronger together. Many Vietnamese people finding new homes in different parts of the world. Over 750,000 went to the U.S. from 1975 to 2002. You can feel how unified we are here. There's this universal sense of family when Vietnamese people see each other, passively knowing what they had to have gone through to get here. Like when my mother calls other Vietnamese people Che or An, having genuine appreciation for each other's presence. The world needs more peace. My heart goes out to all those who were and are still affected by this war. I often hear from people after attending these events, you have to do something for the next generation. We are still fighting for peace. After much pondering on what can really be done to bring peace to our people, I'm still not 100% sure. It's a very complicated situation, but I believe that unity is the main focus. Continue to love one another with grace. Be there for your people and community. Find ways to give back. Simply taking the time to listen to your family and their experiences goes a long way. It will mean a lot to them, and trust me, it will help you too. You begin to understand more and become more grateful. I hope that the past generation can rest easy knowing that the spirit is still high and that the mission for peace is never ending until obtained. May God bless us all. Thank you.
Representing our generation right now. Next will be Alex Rod, a Centralville High School student. He is a Korean American who is involved with the Make Us Visible Virginia chapter, who is pushing for API history within the Virginia state government. Alex.
Hello, good morning. So today I want to take a moment to speak, not just as a student of America or Korea, but as a product of the fostered relationship between two democracies. April 30th, 1975 marks the fall of Saigon, and it is not just a day in a textbook, but it was a day of loss, and it marked the end of South Vietnam. The end of a dream for many people, the loss of a home for many more. It was a solemn day across the world, because that day we didn't just lose a war, we lost allies, pride, and a country of democracy. With the estimated total death count being around 1.5 million in South Vietnam, of this 1.5 million consists my great-grandfather, who was shot and killed in the Vietnam War, leaving my grandmother and her siblings orphaned in South Korea. Now, it is hard to imagine the fear and pain this war has caused in the name of democracy, and with the level of grief that I can only imagine. The United States took that fight, but not alone. With allies such as the Republic of Korea, Korean soldiers fought and bled alongside the Americans and South Vietnamese, not because they had to, but because they believed in the same principles of liberty, democracy, and the protection of human rights everywhere. That alliance mattered, and that friendship, forged in blood, showing us that freedom is something that we should never take for granted. Democracy is not easy, it is fragile, it demands effort, and sometimes even sacrifice. And while the fall of Saigon reminds us of what we have lost, it also reminds us of why we keep fighting. We may have lost that battle, but we haven't lost the lessons that it taught us. That freedom is always worth defending, and that our allies, like South Korea, stand with us in that mission. So today, let's remember, not just what was lost, but what lives on. The spirit of those who believed, and the courage of those who stood up, and the hope that someday, everywhere, people will live free.
Next, we'll welcome Ji Nguyen Esquire, President of the Vietnamese American Celebrate Korea, and I'll let her take one.
Thank you. Kính thưa quý vị, cho Uyên xin nói vài phút. Giáo sư Kim Oanh, các bác, các cô chú, bố mẹ. My speech is not for you. I've listened to you talk about Vietnam War for 50 years. This is not about you. This is about our young people. Thank you for making us visible, for coming and showing up. Thank you for everybody who's not a boomer or a Gen Xer in this room, because you know what? You have to carry on this message. This is our history, not just Vietnamese history, American history, world history. These people are gone. Most of this first couple rows, they may not be here in the next 50 years. I mean, I'm just going to say, probably not. I may not be around in 50 years, but you will. It's going to be your voices. It's going to be your stories. It's going to be your sharing of this history, this heritage, and this culture together. Do not let other people, the communist regime, marketing people, advertisers, don't let them tell you what to think, what to believe. You have all these First Amendment rights to think, to read, to speak, to protest, to worship as you please, to assemble peacefully. Use those First Amendment constitutional rights to think for yourselves. Ask, is this the truth? If it's not the truth, go find the truth. Don't be foolish and don't be a sucker. That's what my generation said. So I thank you all for sharing in this history, our combined history, American history, world history, the tragedy of the fall of Saigon. And I deeply thank all these young people who gave up their Saturday mornings to come here, because I've been listening to these older generations talk for a million years, and it's time to pass that torch. It's time for new techniques, new tactics, new thinking, new leadership. That is you all. Alex, that was brilliant. Joseph, my hat's off to you. We need to continue this thread. You don't have to tell the same stories, because that's not your story. Tell your family's story. Talk to your elders, talk to your families. Let's bring this together, because you know what? Your story going forward is more important than anything, because it's yours. So thank you, and I'm going to give back the balance of my time. Thank you.
Because we're running behind schedule, we are going to go ahead to the next portion of our program. It's a candlelight video, and I welcome back Wanshika to guide us through this video.
Tôi xin phép được mời quý vị trong ban tổ chức